President Biden and the First Lady are set to visit the island of Maui today, where they will see firsthand the devastation caused by wildfires earlier this month.
At least 114 people are confirmed dead now, but many more remain missing. Hawaii's Governor Josh Green spoke to CBS's Margaret Brennan on Face the Nation yesterday about why the emergency alert sirens didn't go off during the fires.
I wish all the sirens went off. The challenge that you've heard, and it's not to excuse or explain anything, the challenge has been that historically those sirens are used for tsunamis. That's when I came to Hawaii 23 years ago, was told when I was living down near the shore. So it's usually tsunamis and hurricanes. For perspective, we've had 6 fire emergencies this August. We had 6 fire emergencies between 1953 and 2003.
Well, Hawaii's emergency management chief stepped down last week after defending his decision not to activate the sirens. On Maui, the unsafe water advisory in the town of Lahaina is expanding. Residents are being told to only use bottled water or potable water from tankers for drinking, brushing their teeth, and cooking.
Meanwhile, many are still looking into what started the deadly wildfires. Some scientists say climate change was not the only factor. Reporting in the Washington Post found the fires appear to be an example of a so-called compound disaster, meaning multiple factors were at play here. For more on this, we were joined by the author of that piece, global weather writer Scott Dance. And Scott, thanks for joining us. This is fascinating, and I've heard some reporting on this. Our instinct, obviously, is to look for a link between the natural disaster and climate change, but how much of the connection is there with the Maui wildfires?
I mean, climate change is at the backdrop of any event like this. Certainly, it's the warmer temperatures are leading to drier conditions, drier droughts around the world where that is occurring. But yeah, there were other factors here. There were invasive grasses that were brought to the island as part of farming and just ornamental reasons. But since agriculture has declined, this grass has really spread, and there are concerns that it really factored into how quickly this fire was able to spread and how intensely it burned. People in Lahaina in particular were, right up against these grasses. And like you just heard the governor say, they are no strangers to fires, but they had never seen a fire move this quickly. There were these intense hurricane force, 80-mile-per-hour winds that were fanning the flames and spreading them, and they just were not prepared for that.
So you said a lot in that answer, but I think just like Omar mentioned, it's really interesting because we want to sort of draw a straight line between climate change, and even though it's called climate change, we still kind of think global warming. Mm-hmm. So we want to draw a straight line. Fire, it's hot. Warming, it's hot. Yeah. But it's all these subtle sort of changes. And you brought up, the grasses, mm-hmm. these invasive grasses that are not naturally occurring on the mountain the island of Maui that have sort of spread. Is that part of the reason? The fact that we're talking about little tiny things here and there, including regular cyclical changes in the weather that happen all the time, that these tiny little things that don't connect so easily, is that part of the reason why residents, emergency personnel were caught off guard by the intensity of this fire?
I mean, I think, like my reporting showed, you need all of these things to come together to really make a disaster. That's what a lot of experts told us. So, this is one of the concerns with climate change, that, it is in the backdrop of this, but there are things where, maybe they weren't a problem in the past. They weren't something that contributed to disaster in the past. And now, under these new conditions, they are. I mean, Hawaii was dealing with a very quick forming drought, but they've also been dealing with decades of drying conditions. And, that's another thing where the researchers on Hawaii that I talked to said has not been, a direct connection has not been made. But, we do know that around the world, in California and other places, climate change is being linked to larger and more intense wildfires, more frequent wildfires. So, there are just lots of places where we're not used to seeing intense wildfires like this. And when they're, converging with these other factors and this lack of preparation and, not being used to these levels of fires and disasters, we're just really getting hit hard.
So then when the experts you spoke to, what did they say we should be doing to prepare? I mean, is it really a matter of preparing for the unthinkable, the completely unexpected?
I mean, yeah, they definitely said there are places that, don't see intense wildfires now that will need to start thinking more carefully about what building materials are we using, how much are we hardening our homes and our communities to wildfires or other threats, what have you. But, they just emphasized that we need to consider that some of these factors have changed. Most of the most deadly wildfires in U.S. history are from a century or more ago, when it was a much younger country. We had lots of logging debris around. We had different communities that were built with wood, and we sort of learned from that and we adapted from that. And now we're seeing deadly wildfires once again, almost as deadly as those historic fires. And so they're saying we need to, consider how this has changed, what is converging to make these wildfires so deadly again in these communities, and how can we build differently or in different places in light of that.
It's like, think of something that hasn't happened here in 100 years and still set aside, money for it, because you never know. Scott Dance, thank you very much.
Thank you.